Well, thank you very much. Good afternoon. It's 1 o'clock, so it's a tricky time. I know we just had a fantastic lunch, and so hopefully we can keep you awake and energized and excited about the discussion that we're hoping to have today. So today right now, this is the first of 2 sessions on Samsung Health. The following session will be a panel on diabetes and digital health. It's going to be a really exciting one. We've attracted some really fantastic speakers and who are representing different stakeholders across the ecosystem, and I think that many of you will get a lot out of it. So at the conclusion of this session, get some water, have a bio break, and please come right back afterwards. I think you'll really enjoy it. This session is about partnerships and working together to transform health. And just as the keynote this morning, where DJ and Yong and all the others spoke about how critical it is that our partnerships play a role in expanding all the work that we can do together. Now, the amazing thing about health, and I'm a physician, so I take this very personally, we want to make a difference in people's lives. But when we think about the healthcare ecosystem, it is vast, it is massive, it is very complicated. And we're just talking about in the United States, for example. So this is definitely not something that Samsung can do alone or even wants to do alone. We know that there are partners out there with amazing technologies, fantastic ideas, and we want to work together with you. Now, here's an outline of what we'll be talking about for this session. I'll start off talking about Samsung Health, a little background, mission, vision, and thinking a little bit about the business opportunities to work together. And after me will be my colleague Narendra, who will talk, and he's an engineer, so you wouldn't trust anything I had to say about anything technical. We'll talk about the technical points of collaboration. And finally, SVP Yong will talk about some exciting news that we got recently about what we're doing from a regulatory side and our relationship with the FDA, a critical stakeholder for us to be able to move forward in the healthcare space. So let me give you a little background about Samsung Health. Our vision is empowering individuals and transforming health. We believe that we can build and provide tools to the end user to help them make healthy choices and decisions. Sleep more, exercise more, eat healthier. It is consistent with this increasing shift towards a consumerization of healthcare. And thereby, we can help transform their lives, but also we seek to try to influence and shape and transform the healthcare system, which has so many challenges already. Now, we have a really lofty goal. We want to make 1 billion people healthier. And actually, it's not as hard as it sounds. We heard earlier today that there are over 1 billion Samsung devices already out there. And we think about the portfolio of Samsung devices. When we already talked about the refrigerator this morning, we could talk about air purifiers, we could talk about vacuum cleaners, televisions, so many ways to communicate as well as improve the health conditions around people. I think it becomes fairly obvious. Now, in our journey with Samsung Health, we started out with trying to help people make healthier choices. Right? I mean, the key here is how do we make the healthy choice the easier choice? And so starting with that and tying in our portfolio of wearables and then also our partners in the device and wearable space and being able to collect that information, present it to the user, set goals, provide insights, and also to share that information to our partners so that they can help develop the work they're doing as well. Now, once you start with that lifestyle side, it becomes easy to think about what I would call secondary prevention. So not quite diagnosed with a full-blown illness, but those conditions that will definitely lead to that point. Weight gain, hypertension, prediabetes, for example. All those diseases are things that many of which can be managed in part through lifestyle changes. And then finally, virtualizing healthcare. Earlier this year in March, we announced a partnership with American Well and have now connected in a telehealth capability where within a few taps you can talk to a doctor, going fully into the healthcare space with a partner. Also, we're working and interested in thinking about how to deliver care management protocols. So also, again, very much in the clinical space. Here's a snapshot about the history that we've been on, but this isn't accidental or just by convenience or technical ability. This is very much by intention. In 2012, we first launched S-Health, which is what it was called at that time, preloaded in our flagship devices. And by the way, it continues to be preloaded in our flagship devices and soon nearly all of our mobile phones. and also available for download on Android phones. We were leveraging, at that time, 2012, leveraging the technical capabilities within the phone and the device, adding value for the phone. And so, unlike many of our competitors, we had a heart rate sensor. We still do. We have a stress sensor. We have an oxygen O2 saturation sensor there. Really unique compared to many of our competitors. And as we've been working with our users or our end customers, as well as our partners, we've been evolving and shaping this, adding on more capabilities to make this stickier, right? The big challenge here is engagement. But when people are using our phones, checking their phones 200 times a day, we think there's an opportunity there to pull them in to help guide them around health. Our most recent big change was a release of 5.0 in March, tied with our hardware S8 announcement earlier this year. At that point, we changed and rebranded to Samsung Health, and we had a 4-tab structure, which I'll go through in a second, and providing that capability, that telehealth capability. But that's just 5.0. We have a roadmap going far to the future, some exciting things coming down the pike that we look forward to kind of working together with you all as well. I should also mention that over that time, we've accumulated a lot of users. We have a couple 100 million users around the world. In the United States, we have about 60 million, 10 million monthly active, which makes Samsung Health probably the most used health and wellness app in the industry. And we're really excited about that. But the idea to be able to get in front of the eyes of so many people, I think makes us, one of our values as a partner, a distribution channel for our partners. And so we're excited to talk about that some more. So here's just a brief view about Samsung Health, so you kind of know, how we have things laid out. The first wireframe or screenshot you can see here is basically the dashboard screen. We call that the Me page. Keep track of your activity, your sleep, your diet, and some of the more granular information, as well as setting tabs or trackers specifically to some of your interests. The next section is called Together. Now, we all know that health does not happen in a vacuum, right? We know the most important influencers about health are often kind of the matriarch or the woman in the family who's caring for their parents, caring for their spouse, caring for their child. We know how powerful the advice of one another and friends are. And this is our first step towards empowering that, competing one-on-one with people on various activities. And we've had a major step ahead of that, which I'll talk about in a second. The third slide is called Experts. Right now, we're providing that telehealth service there. And finally, Discover. And the vision for this section is to provide a very tailored information feed, news feed experience. We tie in insights that's tailored for you, so I wouldn't receive information about pregnancy. People with diabetes would get the important information that they could use every day. Now, we've been growing this ecosystem of partners, and as you can see, we're talking about apps, we're talking about wearables, we're talking about glucometers, we're talking about weight scales, blood pressure cuffs, and et cetera. And I hope that some of you see yourself on this screen, that you can be part of this ecosystem, because this is just the beginning. Let me just go into Ask an Expert, and I go into that a little deeper in part from a partnership perspective. Right now, we offer, that users can have an urgent care visit. It's 2 a.m., your kid is sick, you don't want to have to fight in the ER to try to get your kid seen. You can, after a couple clicks, speak with a doctor through a video consultation to address that concern. But obviously, we can do so much more. We can do subspecialty care, right? We can do women's health. We can do behavioral health. We can do nutrition. We can do exercise. I mean, there's so many things. The pain point for many of our users is being able to get there, to make that appointment, to have to interrupt their lives to see a specialist, and we can shortcut that. And so we're looking for partners to help us build out what this could mean. So I mentioned briefly about the Together tab, and we had set up this, the technology to allow for one-to-one competition. But a few months ago, we had set up the capability now that you can compete with 10,000 other people around the world. This ability to compete, to have a virtual contest with people around the globe. But we could also do it, and we're looking for partners who are interested in doing it for particular segments, whether it be a region, whether it be for a particular corporate event, and et cetera. It's really fun. It's very competitive. badges, ranking, all those things, driving people to make healthier choices. And it's not just we're going to find a partner and we tie things up and then somehow we expect that your work and the work we do together get just discovered magically, right? We are also committed to promoting the work that we do together. We have a home banner on the Me's page. It's a huge chunk of the top part of the screen, which right now we're using to promote Ask an Expert, and some of the diabetes work we'll be launching in a few weeks. We can promote through this screen in the front of tens of millions of people, if we're just talking about the United States, about the work we're doing together to drive users to utilize those services or utilize that functionality in our partnership. Push notifications on the quick drop screen, or even Bixby. We talked this morning about Bixby and the power it's going to have in so many ways. Again, the phone being a center of a lot of interactivity, an opportunity to really kind of deliver and connect to people. We have the capability. We're collecting data on how people do things and they utilize this phone every day. People make 200 health-related choices a day. We're going to learn a lot about them, and based on that, we can start working on targeting these messages, targeting the notifications and the banners, so it goes to the right person at the right time, that kind of the goal in order to deliver the right information to the right people. And the better we can get to know them, the better we'll be able to do that. A new feature that will be coming out soon is what we call Program. And this is essentially content. We're working with partners to be able to present their content to our users, and also thereby expanding the value proposition for Samsung Health, but really featuring our partners as well. And so the first use case for this is around fitness. As you can see here, we have videos from some of our partners. Users can utilize those videos, can also and then on the second screen, connect back to the main app of that partner. And finally, a service platform. And Narendra will go into much better and believable technical detail about this, but have developed a capacity whereby service providers can lay on top of our platform in order to benefit from a whole range of our capabilities. So whether it be in terms of payment, or through notifications, or even to utilize the data that we have within Samsung Health and collected from various sources and able to make that come through in your application or your service to make it stronger. And soon, it's already been announced, but soon we'll be launching a diabetes wellness a service, and it will utilize these functionalities. So let me stop there, because it's starting to get technical, and I probably should stop. And we'll have Narendra, who will be able to speak in much greater detail.
Thanks, Ricky. So I'll now take a deep dive into the technical capabilities which our team has been developing for the last 1 year. For any pragmatic developer or a product owner who has taken an idea from like POC to production knows that to work with a partner, you will have to have a complete tool set or a complete ecosystem. It's not just your Hello World or a documentation. You need like an Hello World, a couple of test apps, and then documentation and also verification tools to make you take to production. In that regards, this year we are introducing something new called Service Platform. And what you're seeing on the slide is an architectural solution which we have partnered with WellDoc to tailor the diabetes problem. For any business in a diabetes domain knows that the patient has to continuously monitor the log of glucose levels so that when he goes to the doctor the next time, pretty much the doctor makes claim or what should he do next depending on his glucose log. So instead of that, what he now is the patient can now enter all the details into the Samsung Health app, and once it is entered, it gets stored into our data server in a format which can be readable at any point of time. And then our reference server, which is the blue box you are seeing up there, can read all of these details at any point of time with the right access and determine what should be the next best step for the patient. And they can send the notification via this push server. So what we believe is that instead of maintaining the log and taking to the doctor, here is a chance to completely automate it and send the notification to help the patient to make better choices. One of the key features that most of our partner needs is the billing system. Although it seems easy, to be honest, it's a hard problem because in each country you will have to work with a different domestic partner. Samsung has this capability to bill in 82 countries, so we have added that feature also here. So just by using this ecosystem, your app or your web interface can now lay in 82 countries all over the globe. What are we getting at? We want to solve hard problems and partner with businesses, and also take advantage of the millions of Samsung Health users we have, and so that we can make better decisions and help the doctors make the user's life better. So as Ricky explained, this is a new feature that we have introduced this year, and we believe this is the best way to serve new content to our Samsung users. Going into technical details, it ideally consists of 4 parts. First one is the program info, where we are telling what is the name of the program, what is it goaled at, what is the summary, and other details. Next is, you want to schedule it, because if it's a 10-week program or a 10-week gym exercise or a yoga exercise, you want to show different videos and stuff. You can now layer them up in that section, and you can also schedule it so that you can put the order of the images or the videos. And finally, some more resource links, so that once the user finishes all of this, you can ask them to come back to your website or user space so that they can get better results or new features. So all of this will have to be put in an XML, and at that point, it's pretty much an XML upload for us. What we will give you is a sample XML and also an environment to verify. Once you feel comfortable, you can now send it over to Samsung team, and we should be happy to upload it to Program Store server. What would happen is that once it is uploaded to Program Store server, any of the Samsung user can now download it with the click of a button. So we believe for any business who wants to show new data or new capabilities, this is the best way to do so for a streamlined health audience. The next section is the health devices. To provide a little history, we have always been in the devices market, but all these days we were doing one-to-one partnership, where we used to go to a manufacturer, talk to them, and tailor the specs. But this year, we have taken a big step forward and opened the specs and generalized it. So what that allows is to allow more hardware devices to come on board. And what you're seeing on screen is a Patron heart monitoring device. And with a few permissions, it is now able to talk to the Samsung Health app and then send all the heart data. Along with that, we are also collecting the basic walking steps and other details. What we believe is the doctor can now make much informed decision using all the details. And also businesses using our previous model can now collect this to make any alerts or notifications. So I said we opened up the spec. What did we really do? We made our specs close to low energy Bluetooth devices specification, so that if any of the new hardware devices there, and if you are very close to BLE spec, you can now talk to Samsung Health pretty much without any overhead. What that allows is, again, to allow more devices to come on board. And we have also provided with a good documentation and verification tools for each of these 8 data structures, so that you can just get your new device, make it BLE spec, and now start sending the data and do all the verifications and other stuff required via the verification tools. The one other advantage is that, once all this data is collected with the initial model, can now go to our data server and can also be read by the businesses. We believe this will allow more devices to come on board and hence more data points, and then make a better decision. So going to the overall ecosystem of Samsung Health, this is what we have, right? We always had Android apps which can talk to Samsung Health via Android SDK. And this year, we have improved the features and also added a new feature called Health Document, using which you can now get the complete report, not get events by events, but you can get a whole report and say, what did the user do for a week or a month? The next one is the BLE devices. This is something new we have introduced this year, and we believe this will increase the interaction with the Samsung Health. And finally, for all the businesses who want to solve hard problem, they can use our server SDK as a Spring Boot so that they can quickly solve hard problems using this complete ecosystem we will provide. While we were doing all this, we also had a chance to participate in the FDA's pilot program of pre-certification, and I'm happy to announce that we got selected, and we have with us SVP Yong Lee to give more details about it.
So I'd like to share with you some of the activities that we've been working with on the regulatory front, particularly with the FDA. And many of you probably heard about the pre-certification program that the FDA has recently announced. And the basic ideas that the FDA has actually aligns very well with our philosophy. First of all, we think that digital health is really going to fundamentally change how healthcare is provided. And we think that there has to be a lot more touch points to the individuals than there is now using the clinical devices. And secondly, we also very strongly believe that patient safety is of utmost importance, and we want to make sure that everything we release out there into the public provides the highest level of patient safety. So there is the FDA is looking at a fundamental paradigm shift. So what used to be the old way of providing clearance to a device is pre-market clinical validation. So something very similar to validating a drug, a new health device would be put through a rigorous set of tests in a very clinical environment, pre-market, before the device is released to the market. But digital health is very different. We have a much larger number of devices, phones or wearables, well in the tens of millions, sometimes in the hundreds of millions. And what that provides is the opportunity to validate the functionality and safety through post-market real-world data collection. So one of the things that we can possibly do is introduce the device, the hardware, build software as a medical device on top of the hardware, and validate the safety and efficacy of the software through collection of real-world data. To get this project started, the FDA has selected 9 companies. We're one of the 9. And the general idea is to, once the program is in place, the pre-certification program is in place, to certify the company for the company's ability to provide quality and safety mechanism to make sure that the devices is safe. So the idea is that companies are pre-certified and would then need to go through a faster clearance track. So I wanted to go kind of a little bit on the power of big data. So traditionally, when we had clearance of very clinical hospital-grade devices, the number of subjects is in the order of hundreds, sometimes in the thousands. But what the digital health and the consumer applications allows us to do is to potentially collect data from millions of points. So this is an example of data that's coming in from S-Health, and you can see heart rate over 10 million, stress measurement over 6 million, and then in the more clinical side, blood oxygenation, SpO2, it's almost 4 million. Blood pressure, this is where individuals use a FDA-cleared device and provides the number in the S-Health Samsung Health app. That's in the order of 3 million. And blood sugar as well is almost 2 million. So we can kind of see a situation where just by the sheer number of data collection, an individual takes a cuff measurement and shortly thereafter takes a measurement that's provided by one of these consumer devices. And just opportunistically, what we can do is match up the data, a cuff measurement, and then a measurement of a physiological parameter that's made relatively close in time with the reference cuff measurement. And by collecting this data and running it through an algorithm, we should be able to validate the measurements that we take from the consumer devices. So this is a project that we're working on. There's actually two projects with two university-based hospitals looking at two clinically relevant parameters. We're not quite ready to disclose what those are and who the partners are, but because it's a program that involves the FDA, it's centered around measurement of physiological parameters that have clinical applications. And our goal here is to launch these services through apps that's sponsored by the university hospitals. And through the launch of these apps, through IRB consent, we'd like to collect as much data as possible from the field out in the open. And by using these large amounts of data, we'd like to be able to first validate the initial version of the algorithm, and then to iterate and advance the accuracy and the efficacy of that algorithm. And at the same time, working with the FDA on the pre-certification pilot, would like to share the data and work interactively with them to come up with a optimized regulatory procedure. So I think what's going to happen as digital health really starts to really get adopted is that the method by which we validate the services, the clinically relevant services, has to be fundamentally different from the way it's done today. And I think as we're working through the pilot program, I think the solution we will find is by taking large amounts of data, big data, and running algorithms and validations on them, we should be able to validate the efficacy and safety of the devices. So this is kind of the project that we're working on. We just had a kickoff meeting with the FDA a couple days ago on Monday, and the plan is to push through this in the next year or so to validate this new methodology. So thanks so much for your attention. We'd really love to partner with all of you, and when you have a chance, please go outside in the Samsung Health booth, and you can check out how you can use the SDKs to create new applications using Samsung Health. Thanks again for the attention.
So we do have time for questions, and so if anyone has any questions, you can come up to one of the mics.
Hello. I'm Rich Fletcher with MIT. In the last slide you showed with the research validation, I assume the research app is provided by the research team, which could be a university. Is the research server also provided by the university as well?
Yeah, so
I was just wondering what part does Samsung provide versus research?
So in this particular case, the server is not provided by the university, although the university, in terms of data governance, the university has authority over the data collected. The actual server implementation is not done by the university themselves.
Thanks for that excellent presentation. I'm Chris Corey for the American Medical Association. You mentioned on the earlier chart that that heart rate was the #1 collected piece of data on a monthly basis. Is that a function of that being readily available on the phone, or is that a combination of other devices that are all feeding into that also measure that?
Yeah, I think it's the ready access to heart rate on the phone probably is one of the largest factor. So among the parameters there, some are obtained from the phone, SpO2, stress, and heart rate, and the other parameters had to be obtained from FDA-cleared devices. So the individuals would either have to connect by Bluetooth or manually enter the number. So I think the fact that it was readily available directly on the device had a big factor in the numbers.
You know, it's funny, just as an aside, just anecdotally, people seem to really connect to heart rate. It just makes sense to them. It's variable, it changes when they're sleeping, when they're drinking. You know, I mean, there are all these kind of games people have come up with their heart rate sensor. There's something very kind of approachable about that reading. I think sometimes with oxygen saturation or some of the other ones, they're a little bit more distant and not quite sure what to do with that information. And that I wonder if that plays a role, at least anecdotally.
This is Raj Palaputhu from Bayer Pharmaceuticals. That's a great presentation. Just wondering the clinical use cases you're talking about. Is there anything, is it clinical trials or clinical use cases? If these clinical use cases pertaining to therapeutic areas, if Samsung is working in that area other than health and fitness?
Yeah, so we do believe that to do something meaningful in health, we have to go to the clinical side. So the clinical use cases that we're initially looking at are the less, lower acuity applications. So we're not in a position to disclose them at this point, but these are applications that can be implemented on consumer devices, and they're not high acuity, parameters that require very accurate devices. So that's. But these are it is in fact, I guess the reason that we wanted to go this direction is that it's one of the parameters that touches a lot of lives, and that it's a parameter that the FDA is also quite interested in.
And just to add on to that, I think that the work that SVP Jin Lee has been talking about is really exciting. There's some really great work there. That is one of some of the other work that we're doing that's in the clinical space, some of which we can talk about now and some we can't, and maybe at a later date. I do think, though, that we're a consumer hardware company that we believe internally, but have been told a lot that there's so much you can do in the healthcare space, because our expertise is on the engagement side. And then as we try to figure out how do we then develop a competency as well as success from a business perspective on the clinical side has been a learning process for us. And that's, again, where partnerships with the American Medical Association and the American Diabetes Association and many others is so critical for us as we learned together about how to do this. And then walking that careful line around the FDA. And that's why this news that Jen just shared with us is such a big deal. It helps, frankly, internally to give us the confidence that we can continue marching in this space. Because we know our users are asking for it. We know the industry is telling us, why can't we do X, Y, Z on our phones? Then we're getting there.
Hi, I'm with London-based venture firm DN Capital, and my focus is geolocation technologies. Are you guys doing anything in particular to support entrepreneurs developing along the lines of geosensor data and geospatial intelligence as it intersects with mobile health?
In terms you want to collect that data and do some analysis, that's what you're targeting, or the geosensor? Can you get?
Yeah, we're seeing a number of developers looking for tools that will enable them to build better apps, better entrepreneurial services, better enterprise services that extract intelligence from where people go, some of the activities they do, the pace of those, the cadence of those activities. It's not just fitness, but it's geospatial intelligence. And beyond sort of the very fundamental knowing where sort of a mobile phone is at any time, are you doing anything beyond that to support further development?
Sure. Before I start taking that, we can just collect the data from user. Everything, specifically health data, needs a lot of permissions. So it's not just, we can just collect the data and share with the businesses. So what we can do is this model where all you have to do is, we will collect the data and store in our data server. And if you have a particular logic, for example, in this case, Well-Doc partnered with us and said, we'll take the right permissions, you expose some REST APIs, and then you make the call and you make a decision out of your machine learning or anything, and then send the push notifications. We can probably do that. But across all of these areas, its permissions is what is most things. So we just can't share that data directly, but we are happy to put it on our server, and with right permissions, you can use it. So in this, that's why I said we can use this as a springboard, where all you have to do is just replace the logic in that blue box, and the rest of the infrastructure is completely supported by us. And also in this case, you don't even have to develop the whole app. It's a web app interface. You don't have to worry about the app permissions, going into Google Play or anything like that. It's just put that web app interface, and then you can do the logic and then bill for your services.
Yeah, I think for measuring parameters for health, very often the context is very important. And being able to infer the context, geolocation, is actually one of the key parameters that can be used.
Hi, my name is Nikhil. I work on a couple consumer medical products. My question is, what is Samsung Health doing to make the app accessible to populations like the elderly or generally people who aren't really interested in the quantified self movement, and also generate motivation around that and kind of help people to use it every day?
So I'm glad you brought that up. I think that's incredibly important. And if we think from the health side of things, those are the people who are chronically ill, usually in that older demographic. When we think about, baby boomers, for example, and we all know how quickly that demographic is growing. But from the business side of things, of course, there's tremendous opportunity there, and we know that something like 50% of people who are 60 plus have a smartphone. So then the opportunity is tremendous. I think that we continue to work on how do we continue to simplify, but yet continue to strengthen the value proposition within Samsung Health, and working through partners in order to do that. We have our wearables, for example, are targeted to a broad audience, frankly. And what is there? How do we then create or support a use case for senior populations or people who are less tech savvy? And we have some projects in that direction, as a matter of fact, and have made quite a bit of progress, actually, that we're not quite ready to announce yet, but it's something that we're definitely thinking a lot about. So I'm glad you brought that up. And I should add, though, is also thinking about, from a device perspective, from a hardware perspective, do we need to rethink our wearables to be one that's more friendly for a health situation? So, for me personally, I would say that having a watch that only has 3 days of battery life is just not going to cut it, right? People are going to take it off. If you're spending more time recharging than collecting data, there's a problem there, right? So, having wearables that can last a week, maybe even longer, right? Having the right tech size, going through all the thinking through from a disability perspective to get the right font size and all those things are things that we've thought a lot about, actually. And so it's a matter of figuring out what the next steps are about realizing it.
Do we have any more questions from the audience? We have 5 more minutes.
Perfect. A little bit more time for you to take a break to come right back for the session at 2 o'clock.
Well, everybody, please say thank you to the speakers.